This is 2 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, verse 5. It says, "Examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves, how that Yasharahla is in you, except ye be reprobates. But I trust that ye shall know that we are not reprobates." I'd like to say, call on Allah, Yahweh Bashim Ashab Bashim Kakadash, double honors about the Elizabeth Millstone, peace, citation, to hope for elect, Shalom. And the titles for this lesson is going to be Examine Yourselves Daily. So, when you pretty much are walking in the path of the Lord, you first find out that you're Israelite, and eventually you start learning more about this truth and start trying to actually apply the scriptures. You gotta make sure that you are living by the ways of the Lord to the best of your ability, and a part that comes with it is not only just being wise in the scriptures and being knowledgeable, and just fearing the Lord, but you also have to, a part of that comes with also moving a certain type of way, your conduct, how you approach other brothers in this thing, how you conduct yourself amongst the brotherhood and things of that nature, making sure you're not as offensive, making sure that you try the best in your power to not offend the body. And the Lord wants you to be aware of these things, and He wants you to be well-rounded, a servant. We all gonna make mistakes, we all gonna mess up at some points, but it's like we gotta try to do the best that we can to make sure we check ourselves, check where we lacking at and try to work on it, And I'm gonna bring this precept out, and this is talking about it's gonna go into the Lord's Supper, he had with his disciples. That was the last one when he was going into how he was gonna be betrayed. But at the same time, it's like, he had to go along with the story, even though he knew he was about to be betrayed on that very same night. So it says in 1 Corinthians 11, chapter, verse 23, it says, "For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Yahweh the same night in which he was betrayed took bread." Basically I was going into before I brought out the verse. Verse 24, "And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also he took the cup, when he had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye, as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread, and drink this cup, ye do shew the Lord's death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body." Right? And that's going to show you that, for those that come into this thing, right, that are not fully examining themselves, that's not really trying to check their spirit, trying to check where they're going off or where they're lacking at, And this doesn't really have anything to do with what you know, in terms of you knowing how to break down doctrines, you knowing how to break down the history, you knowing the knowledge of the scriptures, the understanding the precepts and how to teach good. That's good and all, but the main thing is you gotta know how to be good to the Lord's servants, knowing how to be hospitable amongst the brothers, not being a selfish nigga, because that's pretty much what what Judas was. And he was supposed to be one of the 12 disciples, which of course he was physically of it, but he wasn't really chosen, spiritually to be, the 12th, because he was disenchanted. And he was casted out by the Heavenly Father and replaced by Matthias. So yeah. And that's what happens when you don't examine yourself, is that eventually the Spirit will leave you. You know what I mean? Because the Lord will always take His Spirit away and give it to someone else that He deems worthy to basically maintain it. Scriptures say that how wisdom shall not dwell in a malicious soul. And that's talking about the Holy Spirit, which is pretty much the highest form of wisdom that you could ever maintain, or that you could ever attain. The hardest part is to maintain it. You know what I mean? Because maintaining is, of course, the key word in that is keeping. And to attain it is, you got to achieve it. And that's if the Lord wants to give it to you. Because you see, scriptures say that how the wicked shall not understand. And that's talking about, you know, the heathens and these other nations. And it also kind of applies to 2/3 that are not meant to get the understanding of this truth. Because there's going to be some 2/3 who's going to get the understanding, but then it's like, the worst thing for them is that they're going to be beaten with many stripes, because now they know better. And you're going to have some 2/3 like that. So there's some guys in this truth that's lot is meant to be perfectly judged just for getting the understanding of this truth, especially the ones that call themselves and actually are let's say in the Israelite camps that are considered to be leaders, and they're not teaching their congregation the right ways. You know what I mean? And they decide to go back to the world or whatever, knowing that they've been in the truth for, you know, quite some time, like a couple of years or some decades or some, you know, however long, you know, they've been in this thing. You know what I'm saying? Because you got guys that's been in this thing for a minute. Like, we talking about shit, probably going up to 3 decades, you know, like Yasharahla. And look, he not examining himself. This nigga's still teaching with a hat on and shades. You know, he think all the camps are supposed to be under him. And he got leaders amongst his congregation talking crazy on the platform, you know, and teaching all wayward doctrines. And it's like, you know, just the nerve he has to pretty much still be in the truth and consider himself as a teacher at that point. In verse 30, we continue on. It says, "For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep." Right? And you can't find any body in this thing to be a hindrance to the body. You know what I mean? Because the body got to be active. We got to be alert. We got to be on guard. That's why we have to examine ourselves. You know what I mean? Verse 31 says, "For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world." See, that's a part of examining yourself right there. Making sure that you do whatever you can to please the Lord, so that if anything, if He chastises you, it's in His mercy and not in His wrath. You know what I mean? Because I believe, like, the book of Hebrews goes into being chastened by the Lord so that you won't be considered as a bastard. You know what I mean? And that's a merciful chastisement, of being chastised in His mercy. You know, you may feel that quick chastisement, but it's like, it's nothing compared to like being chastised by, you know, with the whole world. Because when the world gets chastised, they're gonna be so to be very devastated, because it's like they're gonna really know their chastisement is gonna be pretty much a heavy one that's gonna cause their horrific demise. And it says, verse 33, "Wherefore, my brethren, when ye come together to eat, tarry one for another." Verse 34, "And if any man hunger, let him eat at home, that ye come not together unto condemnation, and the rest will I set in order when I come." So yeah, that's the point on that. And I'll bring out some other precepts too that tie along with, you know, examining yourself. And this is in Matthew chapter 7 verse 1. It says, "Judge not that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with that, it's like, and if what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that's in thy brother's eye? Which mote is going into a small piece of wood. If you don't know, now you know. So it says, let me read that again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Right. So basically, you got something in your life that's hard, because a piece of wood in your eye, that's brutal. You would know how excruciating that pain is, just from the sound of it. So with that being said, it's like, if you're doing something in your life that pretty much is causing you, let's say, how do I put this, but like, it's causing you some sort of I guess harm or hindrance to your spirit in this sense, and then you telling somebody else about their ways, that's pretty much causing a hindrance in their spirit. You gotta lead by example. This thing is not about do as I say and not as I do. It's more of like, be a leader by example. Not only with your words, but you gotta actually prove it with your actions as well, to show that, they say you practice what you preach. And you see, when it's true, that's all what this is about. You know what I mean? Because we're honestly rehearsing a righteous act, so we're not gonna fully do everything perfectly. But at the same time, it's like there's just certain things that you could work on, and just try to build from there. And verse 4 says, "Oh, how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye." So that right there will be a bigger piece of wood, and when you find it with a lot of these other false camps, that's like how it's symbolic to when the scriptures talk about how these Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, like the wicked ones amongst them, they'll strain at a gnat and swallow a camel whole. And you don't want to be in that type of category where you're trying to pick on the smallest matter that can't be, solved, not captivity, because, it's pretty much unnecessary. Like, you get on brothers for not following the whole laws to the T, like getting on brothers because they wear mixed fabric. But yet, no way in hell are you following that law. There's no way anybody in this earth is wearing 100% complete, fabric, of the same one fabric. And it's like they swallow a camel whole, because it's like, look how much wickedness goes on in their congregations. And then, it's like they don't get on their congregation for all the wickedness that goes on. It's no different than the Christian church. And to be honest, they're worse than the Christian church, because here it is now, you've been enlightened with the truth. You're supposed to know better. But that's the pride and arrogance that comes with niggas in this thing that don't do what? Main thing, they don't examine their self. And verse 5 says, "Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." So you got to clean up your major offenses, no matter how big or small, whether it be a beam or a mote. You got to pretty much clear it up. You know what I'm saying? Before you are able to help someone else out. Because the first thing somebody gonna say if they see something a piece of thing stuck in your eye, they're gonna be like, how the fuck you trying to help me? With my eye, when you can't even help your own damn self in your own eye. So that's basically the point right there. And this is another good point right here. It says in Romans chapter 2, and let me see. I'll start at verse 11, because the main point is going to be in verse 13, but it still adds up in the end of the day. So Romans 2 verse 11 is what Apostle Paul wrote. It says, "For there is no respect of persons with Yahweh. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law." And it goes to show you right there that with that verse 12, even if you sin without knowing the law, you're still going to be pretty much judged, depending, of course, about how, treacherous the sin is. And, of course, if you sin knowing the damn law, knowing your offenses, knowing better in this truth, then you're going to be ultimately judged by the law, which, at the end of the day, the Most High has it to where, is an ignorance of the law is no excuse. Same thing like Esau got into society where he says ignorantia non juris, ignorantia juris non excitat, if I'm not mistaken, that's how it is. His Latin way of saying ignorance of the law is no excuse. But when you go into Leviticus 5 and 17, that goes pretty much into that, how the Most High declares it. But anyway, verse 13 says, "For not the hairs of the law are just, but before Yahweh." So let me read that again. "For not the hairs of the law are just before Yahweh, but the doers of the law shall be justified." All right, and that goes to show you right there that you'll be justified if you do. And this is, of course, following the laws to the best of your ability, because everything is going to be all through Yahweh's, the Most High's grace and mercy first and foremost, and then Yahweh, because he will be an extension of it. So this is a little like father like son thing. And Yahweh was the ultimate example of a chief prophet and a doer of the law to its fullest completion, because he did all the laws perfectly, and he didn't commit sin. He walked in his last reincarnation. So he was a perfect example of a person who followed all the laws perfectly and prophesied, and even, of course, he was a carpenter, so he was also working, as a servant as well, doing all those things in captivity. And verse 14 says, "For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not law are a law unto themselves, which shew the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness in their thoughts, and meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. In the day when Yahweh shall judge the secrets of men by Yahweh Hamashiach according to my gospel, behold, thou art called a Jew and retest in the law, and makest thy boast of Yahweh." Verse 18, "And knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which has the former knowledge and of the truth in the law. Also, therefore, which teaches another, teachest thou not thyself? Though thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? Thou sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Though that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Thou makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law dishonorest thou God. For the name of Yahweh is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written, For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law, but if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision those transgress the law? For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of Yahweh. Right? And that proves right there that all this ties up with what? With examining yourself, because you have to make sure that you're a doer of the law, and part of the law also mentions that you have to be also hospitable, to the best of your ability, brotherly as much as possible. And scriptures also say, like, to study to show thyself approved. But at the same time, scriptures also go into how it's best to have more fear for the Most High than having more knowledge in the doctrines and in teaching the word and having no fear. That's the worst thing that you could ever, fall under that category. That's, having that knowledge of being a teacher, but then it's like you don't have fear. Nah, you gotta have the fear, and you have to be a good teacher in the sense of, just trying to study to show that self-approved. But if anything, it'll be better that you have more fear and not being good at teaching than for you to be a good teacher and having less fear. Because scriptures even go into how, in Sirach, about how the fear of the Most High is all wisdom. And another good point I forgot to also mention, is that part of this, this trial process that the Lord is trying to put, everyone through, and, mainly his men first and foremost, is to show you that, when he's trying you out, you want to examine yourself so that you could be, potentially his servants, his elect. Because that's ultimately the goal of being this thing, is to be considered and deemed worthy for salvation. And that's why it mentions that many are called and few are chosen. Because the thing is that some people, they come into this thing and they don't find themselves being fully, immersed in this thing. They don't find themselves grounded on good soil. So there's certain things that come into their life, like certain distractions, which are pretty much stumbling blocks that, pulls them away from this truth, that pretty much gets them sifted out. And last point I want to make before I close out is, I could see why when it's coming to, the process of, getting new brothers to come into the camp, it could be, like a long time to try brothers out. Like some brothers might take maybe, depending on how much they attend and how much they be out there, how much they consistently go out. It could be maybe a process that might go from maybe years to maybe even months to weeks. It all depends. And ultimately, just because you came in fast don't mean anything. Because the Lord will always make somebody that came in, that took a while to come in, that could be a brother that could potentially be the elect or so. You never know. And the one that came in faster could have been a 2/3. And you got a lot of guys that come into this thing that, since they don't check themselves, they could be, the worst set of niggas, honestly. And you usually find the worst set of niggas in the truth. Because here it is, you expect they know better. You would think to yourself that anyone who has the truth will have some sort of integrity and some morals. But nah, they will lose all that for a sense of pride, and pretty much that gets into a nigga's head when he feels like he has the knowledge for this, amount of time, and then the fact that they're, pretty much out there learning certain doctrines and teaching and things of that nature, you know, they might start becoming like a Sith Lord, like you see in the Star Wars. And then before you know it, they're gonna start trying to maybe go as far as trying to scam brothers and trying to, you know, gain access to some brother's personal information and trying to release it out to the public, you know, to try to like, you know, like be a traitor to brothers in this thing. And you're gonna find a lot of guys like that, you know, in the times to come. So yeah, with that, I hope may let's edify, let's give all glory, praise, honor to Adonai, Yahweh, Hashem, Shamalak, Yahweh, Shah, Hashem, Kadash, the abundance of the apostle, Ezra, Emil, Sophie, Shalom, Shalom, 1.